Hi guys, welcome back to the Curly Reader. My name's Amanda, and today I want to share with you the remainder of the books that I read during middle grade March. So I did do a previous wrap up halfway through the month, going over the first 14 books that I read during the month. So I highly encourage you to go back and check that out to see what I read during the first half of the month. In this wrap up, I have 9 more books to share with you. So I'm just going to kind of start from the top. They're not in any order. I'm just going to kind of go through them. So the first one I have here is The Wednesday Wars by Gary D. Schmidt. I read this because it was a recommendation from Katie at Life Between Words. I tried to get a recommendation from her and one from Krista, and I read them both this month. And so this is one that she talks very, very highly about. I ended up only giving this one 3 stars. I enjoyed it. It was not my favorite, and I think it might have just been a timing issue maybe with this one. I think maybe if I sat down and I physically read this slower, I might have appreciated it more. I ended up listening to the audiobook of this one, and I did enjoy it quite a bit. It just wasn't as impactful as a lot of the other books that I read this month were. So this follows our main character. I cannot even remember. Oh, Hood. What was his first name? Holling Hood, which, I mean, who has that for a name, but whatever. And he is pretty much the only Protestant child in his class at school. And so everybody else in his class is either Jewish or Catholic. And so they either go to Jewish school or Catholic school once a week, and he doesn't go to either. And so he is the only student in his class that stays behind, and his teacher's not super thrilled about it because I think she was planning on having a little bit of downtime, and now she has to take care of a student. And so it's just kind of about his relationship with his teacher. This is set during the Vietnam War, and so that comes into play a lot in this book, both with the teachers at school. Their husbands are fighting in the war, as well as his older sister who's in high school, and her kind of attitude towards what's going on and where she wants to go to school and all that kind of stuff. So it was interesting. I did enjoy it. It just, like I said, wasn't quite as impactful as I was hoping it would be. But I would be interested in reading more from Gary D. Schmidt just to kind of see what else is out there by him. So that was one. Another one that I read is You Don't Know Everything, Jilly P by Alex Gino. This is one that I was very interested in because it has to do with the deaf community. I personally do not know anybody that is deaf. However, my freshman year of college, I was a major in ASL. And so when I got out of high school, I decided I was going to be an ASL major. And I did that for a semester and then quit because while I love the sign language aspect of it, I wasn't into being an interpreter. So I still really just have this love for ASL and for the deaf community. I went to some deaf events when I was in my ASL classes, and I just really like reading about that, especially on a middle grade level. So this book was very, very interesting. We follow our main character, and once again, I cannot remember her name, Jilly. It's in the title, Amanda. Oh my goodness. So our main character, Jilly, whose mother is pregnant, and when her baby sister is born, she's deaf. And Jilly also is part of this like fandom chat room online for her favorite book series, and within that chat room there is a boy who is deaf in the chat room, and he's very outspoken about the fact that he is Black and deaf. And so she kind of goes immediately to him and is just like, hey, we found out my sister's deaf, what should I do, and so it's just kind of a book about that and about how making mistakes when addressing different groups of people happens, and it's about what you do to correct it after the fact. So sometimes some of the questions that she asks her friend are offensive to him, and he has to tell her, it's not okay for you to ask me those things, and she has to kind of eat her words and say, okay, I didn't know that, how can I do better next time? And so in this, there is a lot of representation. Jilly's aunt, she has aunts that are married, that one of them is Black and one of them is white, and there's some like racial tension within her family, like her extended family and her aunts. There's just, like I said, a lot of different representation, and it's handled so well. And in the author's note, Alex Gino said, it's this type of book is written specifically for white middle graders so that they can gain perspective. There is a lot in this book about deaf black people and the deaf black, I don't know what the proper way to say that is, but their culture and how that is a very niche but very important culture for them, and how this book was specifically written to target white middle graders so that they are aware of how their actions and their words affect other people and their attitudes affect other people, and how it's important to stand up for people when you see things happening that aren't right. And so anyway, I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. It was really interesting, and I listened to this one on audiobook as well, and it was done really, really well. So that is that one. The next one that I read is My Jasper June by Laurel Snyder. This is one that Colby Sharp he's a teacher, a 5th grade, I think, teacher. But he has a YouTube channel, and he had mentioned this one last year as being one of his favorite books last year. And I read this, and I loved this book. This was a 5-star read for me. I thought it was fantastic. This follows our main character, let's see, names again, Leah, who, it starts right at like the last day of school's out for summer, what's everybody doing? And you find out right away that something's not right with Leah's family. They're just not acting right. She doesn't have any plans for the summer. She normally goes to camp. She's gone to camp every year. She's not going this year. So she's just kind of left out. And during the summer, she meets Jasper. One day, she's, walking around a farm, and on the creek, she meets Jasper, and her and Jasper form this friendship, and you find out a lot about Jasper's life, and you find out a lot about Leah's life and the friendship that they have together, and it was absolutely beautiful. It's dark, not dark, but it's definitely heartwarming, heartfelt. Grief is explored in here. It's very, very good. So highly, highly suggest you pick this one up. And if you've read this, I would love to chat with you about it, because I have feelings that I need to express to somebody, but I don't want to give spoilers. So there's that. Another one I read that I gave 5 stars to is The Remarkable Journey of Coyote Sunrise by Dan Gemeinhart. Maybe is how you pronounce his last name. This was the recommendation that Krista gave me, and I love this. Once again, a book talking about grief. I think I'm a sucker for kids going through grief. That's messed up. But you find out in this book that Coyote is the girl's name. Her and her dad live on this school bus, and they are just they roam. They don't really have a set home. They are on the school bus and they travel all the time. And you find out fairly early on that Coyote's mom and sisters passed away. And pretty much as soon as the funeral was over, her dad sold all their stuff and bought the school bus, and they've been on the road ever since. And so you can tell that there's some escapism going on there with her father. And she finds out that a park in her hometown is being torn out. And her grandma tells her this, but she and her mom and her sisters had buried a memory box in the park, and so she needs to go home and get it. But her dad will not go back to their hometown. That's a no-go for him. And so it's just about her trying to get home and get her memory box before it gets torn out. And it was absolutely beautiful. I sobbed like a baby. It'll break your heart and put it back together again. And it was, loved it. So yeah, definitely highly recommend that one. Another one that I read that I was highly, highly anticipating is The Blackbird Girls by Anne Blankman. I did end up just going ahead and buying this one because it just came out and I really, really wanted to read it. But this is about 2 little girls in the Ukraine during Chernobyl. So it is historical fiction. It starts the day of the explosion at Chernobyl. And that's kind of where we start. We have one little Jewish girl and another little girl who isn't Jewish, and they hate each other. They can't stand each other. The one that is not Jewish she is a big bully to the Jewish girl. However, both of their fathers were at the plant when it exploded, or when the nuclear plant exploded, and so they just kind of get thrown together because of that. That is, however, only a very, very small portion of this book. And I was really expecting this book to be more about Chernobyl. And the first part of it was, but there's only so far you can go with that, because they are evacuated eventually from Pripyat, which was the little tiny town that all of the workers at Chernobyl lived, and their families lived there. But yeah, so that was just, like I said, a very, very small portion of the book. High trigger warnings in this for child abuse. There is a lot of child abuse in this. One of the little girls, we find out, is her home life is not very good at all. And it is just a story about friendship and kind of found family when you didn't think you needed to find a family. And it was beautiful. This is definitely one for older middle grade for sure. I would say at least 7th, 8th grade probably for this one. Maybe 6th grade, depending on your kid, but definitely higher middle grade for this one. But it was beautiful and I really loved it. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I just kind of wish that there was more of the Chernobyl aspect in it. But like I said, there's only so much you could do with that, I guess. But I really, really like this. And in the author's note, we hear from Anne Blankman, and some of the stories in here are based off of stories. One of her best friends in school, her mom, I think, lived through Chernobyl, and it was based off of her experiences. And so that was very interesting as well. So highly recommend. Love this one. All right, the next one that I finished is part of one of my annual goals, and I am rereading through Harry Potter. So I read Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I gave this one 4 stars. Of the whole series, this is one of my least favorites. I really, really still enjoyed it. I mean, it's Harry Potter. You enjoy it. So still really enjoyed it. Gave it 4 stars. Loved listening to the audiobook. I've been listening to the audiobooks of these, and they're brilliant. I've been really, really loving approaching them that way. So I did finish that one. And then I read 3 graphic novels. So the first of which is White Bird by R.J. Palacio. This is one that I really wanted to get to because I read Catherine's War at the beginning of the month, and that and this have very similar plots. And so it's historical fiction, and it is following a Jewish girl in France during World War II, and she's in hiding. And so it just kind of goes through the little boy that was helping her hide and her life through the war and kind of what it looked like a little bit after that. It was good. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I think I liked Catherine's War a little bit better. I definitely like the illustrations in Catherine's War better. This is illustrated by R.J. Palacio as well. And it says on the front, it says a wonder story, but it's very, very like loosely tied to that. Julian in the Wonder book, if you've read the little novellas, you kind of get a little bit of Grandmare's story in that. But he, at the very beginning, it sets it up very, very simply in the fact that he has a school assignment where he has to interview and write about a family member, and he calls his Grandmare and she's telling him the story. And then at the end, it gets a little political, in my opinion, which I'm not a huge fan of for middle grade. I understand why it's important, but personally, I'm not a huge fan of when middle grade books get really political, and this one does in the end. It makes a tie to the, standing up for what's right and how World War II happened because people didn't stand up for what they believed in, and it ties it to the refugee crisis in the United States and how, on the Mexican border, and how people need to be standing up for that. And I don't know, like, I'm not opposed to that necessarily, but then I kind of am, especially if this is geared towards kids. I don't know. For me, I don't like it when books get political, but that's a personal thing for me. But anyway, that was my thoughts on that. I gave that one 3 stars. And then the last 2 graphic novels that I read the Tea Dragon Society and the Tea Dragon Festival. These books are so big. And I was expecting to absolutely love these books because everybody that I have heard of absolutely rants and raves about these books, and I just thought they were okay. I was expecting more of a story out of them, and there's really not a whole lot of story to them. The illustrations are very, very cute. I will say that. The dragons are adorable. I did like the Tea Dragon Festival better than the Tea Dragon Society. I felt like the Tea Dragon Society, there was no story, and I just didn't really understand it. So I ended up giving them both 3 stars. They were just okay for me, but I checked them off my TBR, so they had been ones that I had been wanting to read for quite a while. So, anyway, those are the last 9 books that I read during middle grade March. As always, if you have read any of these, I would love to talk with you about them. Specifically, if you have read like The Blackbird Girls or Coyote Sunrise or My Jasper June, I would love to chat about those books because I feel like there's a lot of chattiness that could happen there. So connect with me either in the comments or on Instagram. My Instagram is linked down below, and DM me, and I would love to chat with you about any of those. But if any of these books, if you have thoughts about them, leave those comments down below. And yeah, let me know also what your favorite book was that you read during the month of March. Other than that, I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that you stick around and subscribe. And until next time, see ya.